Hello everyone, it is Cub here. We just had a GOAT Grand Prix in Livonia, Michigan on April 26th, which means we have top 8 deck lists. And me and my friend Grumple here are going to bring those to you. So say hi if you want to, Grumple.
Hi.
Short and sweet. Alright, so let's kick it off with 8th place. In 8th place we have Jeff Campbell. I know a local player to the area. Looks like was playing Chaos Turbo. So starting it off just right with a nice Chaos Turbo deck here in 8th place. Looking through the main, I'm seeing double Dekoichi. We've got a Mind Control in the main. We're actually opting for Phoenix Wing Wind Blast over Raigeki Break, which is pretty interesting. Looking at the side, we actually don't have Zombyra. We have a couple copies of Kinetic Soldier, Cypher Soldier, whatever you want to say. So that's actually kind of cool. I know I've seen some people experimenting with stuff like Gravity Bind. We don't see that here, but I think Kinetic Soldier could potentially be on the rise in Turbo. I know we saw it being played in several different versions of Turbo throughout the day in this GGP. And then, of course, we do have the GOAT package, which is ever on the rise in Turbo right now as we're trying to figure out the Warrior matchup. And we have a couple of decrees, and I think it's interesting. This might be a little bit of a trend for the video. We saw a lot of decrees and a lot of Jinzos at this event. I don't know if that's more of a local thing or if that's a sort of thing coming up in the meta. Do you have anything on that, Grumple?
Yeah, I think a lot of choices here are very regional. I think everybody there is very influenced by AJT like we see it mostly in the side decks and also sometimes the way that the main deck is constructed. Like for example, the idea of Jinzo in the side has been a thing that AJT has been doing for a while. Also, like the Phoenix Wing Wind Blasts are just not that common anymore, and I'd say for good reason. But here, everybody plays it anyway, so it does okay.
Yeah, the AJT
I think I want to say some stuff about the side, though.
Sure, yeah.
Like, first of all, like the Decree thing, like the logic to not playing Decree and Turbo was always that, well, if you play Decrees, you can't play Battle Traps, and if you just have your set monsters get run over by level 2s and late nights and stuff like that, that's not actually that beneficial, even if you lock a lot of cards away out of their deck. I guess here the idea is that the scapegoats and metas kind of give you enough safety. Maybe even the books. I think that might be the idea.
Yeah, just kind of swapping out the Sakuretsus for the books to go along with the decrees. Makes a little bit of sense to me. I know as a warrior player, I don't really cut the number of traps that I'm playing. Against Turbo post side, a lot of times you leave in your Sakuretsus, you're siding in Dust Tornadoes, maybe Zingzinhu, stuff like that. So Royal Decree is still definitely potent against the warrior deck, though. You know, as you said, sort of a little bit of a double-edged sword. Of course, you've got the level 2s coming in, the Blade Knights coming in. Sometimes that won't protect your face-down monsters if you don't have the Book of Moon, but I can see what the logic is.
Also, I'm a big Cypher Soldiers fan right now. I feel like it might even be better than Zombyra for some reason.
Very impactful card against Warriors. I'm a big fan of it as well. All right, moving on to number 7. In 7th place, we have Jack Marsh. This player played Reasoning Gate Turbo, the Grumple special. This player decided that just no one was ready for them in this tournament. The main deck looking pretty standard here, I think. Though we have 3 Crane with 2 Chaos Sorcerer, which I know is a little debated on sort of how those ratios should work out, but we do see an Air Knight Parshath, which we haven't seen in a little bit. We've got the double Metamorphosis technology. We've got Monster Reincarnation, which I've seen sort of go in and out of the Reasoning Gate lists. And then the trap lineup, we have 4 one-ofs, which is kind of interesting to me. 1 Call, 1 Jar of Greed, 1 Mirror Force, 1 Ring of Destruction. I don't hate any of those cards, of course, but just some interesting ratios there. But I think moving to the side deck is where we really start to get into the spice here. Jack packing a copy of Back to Square 1 creature swap, which is also unusual in these decks, and then 1 copy of Double Spell.
We have to talk about it. We have to talk about it.
We have to talk about the Double Spell. Absolutely.
So why? I'm trying to understand the matchups that this would come in against, right? Because which card do we even want? Is this like a mirror match thing where we just try to steal reasonings?
Yeah, so my original inclination was the mirror match. You could maybe say it's there to take your opponent's Pot of Greeds or Graceful Charities, but if that's the case, you're putting into the main. So I'm not totally sure. I want to say mirror match, but even then, there have to be better options than Double Spell, right?
You'd think.
But I don't know. It got top 8 in this tournament with the double spell on the side. It'd be interesting to connect with this player and get the actual reasoning on double spell, because I mean, I was very, very, very surprised when I opened up the list and like that caught my eye. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, the other part that's interesting in the side deck, I think, is the addition of both Decree and Xing's and Who. Like one think that they would come up in the same matchup and they kind of exclude each other. So I'm not sure what the idea was here.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts?
You don't normally see Xing's and Who in this deck at all. Like, I know sometimes you're cutting the giant Trunades whenever you do bring in the Royal Decree package, so we're not doubling up on Trunade, Heavy Storm, Royal Decree, and Xing's and Who. But if we're bringing in the Decree with the Xing's and Who, I'm not the best RGT player in the world, but inclination tells me I would rather leave in the giant Trunades than play the Xings. Yeah, I guess it's kind of like the double spell idea. I'm not sure exactly what the reasoning was for it. Reasoning would be awesome to connect with this player, maybe get an interview and see what the thought process is for that. Because yeah, it's not a card that you see really at all in Reasoning Gate. And another one of the choices in the side that you don't see in Reasoning all that often is Messenger of Peace. Kind of an interesting one. It. Yeah, and it does make some sense. You hold off the aggro decks, and then in your standby phase, when you're ready to go off, just let it go. So I don't hate that inclusion at all.
You can even Trunade it away if you don't want to have it destroyed. I think like overall it's kind of an underplayed card. The problem is that for stuff like Warrior, they still have a bunch of relevant cards that run under it, like Donzo Luke and level 2.
Yep.
Still, like the cost is pretty much non-existent. It's basically just a floodgate.
Oh yeah. There's basically no cost stapled onto that card at all. And I guess like even in this deck, it's even more powerful. Like Dawn, of course, is very good against the combo style decks, just being able to discard cards. But the level 2 you don't really care about, so you're really only letting in one problematic card. I guess it could be.
Well, level 2 isn't relevant, right? Because we don't have any, we don't set anything, so level 2 doesn't matter. I guess Donzo Luke is also kind of risky. Like, what happens if you discard Jinzo or Demog and they get called back or Premod?
Right. Yeah, I've done that a few too many times in my day. Yeah, Messenger of Peace. I think a pretty strong card. I actually like seeing the inclusion here. Nice to see a Reasoning Gate deck in the top 8, I think anyway. As far as I'm aware, we haven't seen this deck put up a whole lot of results recently. I know it had a spike there for a little while, but kind of toned back down just a little bit. So happy to see another Reasoning Gate deck take a top slot at a tournament.
As far as I know, we have exactly one Reasoning Gate invite this season, so it really hasn't been doing too hot.
All right, getting into 6th place, we have Joe Gersack, also playing Chaos Turbo. So this is our second Chaos Turbo deck in the top 8. Interesting to note here, the main deck is the same as our 8th place player, Jeff Campbell, except for one change. There is no mind control in the main. We have one copy of MST. Jeff opted to side that MST. Again, we're seeing the Phoenix Wing Wind Blasts in the deck. We're seeing Triple Dust Shoot. We've got the Jar of Greeds, just a regular Chaos Turbo deck, though. Want to touch on Torrential Tribute being in the main. This is something that I've actually been seeing more of recently. I don't know if that's just bias from having watched the coverage for this GGP recently, but it's looking to me like more people are starting to put the Torrential Tribute in the main. Do you have any insight on that, Grumple?
It might just be to kind of try and combat Warriors a little bit more, because Warrior has really been running the show for the last couple of months. But that doesn't make sense with the side deck, to be honest, because in the side deck we're severely undersiding for the matchup. There's no respect being paid at all.
Looking at the side, we have Asura Priest, which goes in and out of Turbo from time to time. But yeah, definitely not for Warriors. We have Des Wombat, which is a card that I love. Not sure how I feel about it here, but definitely not for Warriors as well. Kaiku, you could bring in against Warriors, but probably not. We have a Mobius. Saw a lot of Mobiuses at the event. Get a couple of Mind Controls, the Walks, Swords. Yeah, then you get to your Warrior package. You got Swords, Dust Tornado, a couple of Raigeki Breaks, and 3 Sakuretsu Armors. Yeah, that's a lot smaller than most Warrior packages than I'm used to seeing. A lot of people are siding a lot of cards to help combat that matchup.
Yeah, I'm going to be quite critical of the side deck, to be honest. I think that a lot of these choices just aren't effective or well thought out. For example, Des Wombat has pretty much left side decks completely because it's just not that effective against burn decks, because they also have monsters that just run this over. It's usually not that great. Also, Kaiku in my opinion is like a card you should either main or side deck unless you have like a specific almost semi-smoke screen strategy, which we will see later. Because I think it improves your warrior matchup more than it improves your turbo matchup. So I'm not sure why we're siding this. Also, Mobius kind of just hasn't been a thing in turbo for a while, because people just decided that siding Regaki Break and Tornado is better, which we have, to be fair. Like, we have those, which it just means that this Mobius is kind of pointless. I don't see why this is here. And then also the second Regaki Break this side doesn't make sense to me. Like, I get that you want the third Regaki Break against like Burn or maybe even Control, but it looks more like he's replacing his Phoenixes. Yep. And I think that having, like, using up side deck space just to switch a Phoenix into Regaki Break just doesn't seem very worthwhile, because the cards are so similar. Like, there's barely a difference, let's be honest. I'd rather have something else.
Sure. Yeah, I can understand that for sure. I think it's interesting that we are seeing a lot of Phoenix Wing Wind Blast in these lists. I know a lot of the turbo players, at least from what I've read recently, are very, very high on just playing Raigeki Break over the Phoenix Wing Wind Blast. So interesting to know the reasoning behind why we chose to main deck the Phoenix Wing Wind Blast in several of these lists for this weekend.
Yeah, I think it's a very regional just trend. I don't think it's going to change the other metas overall.
Very well could be. All right, moving on to 5th place, we have Rob Cedar, who was also playing Chaos Turbo. This deck list, a little bit different. We do have the 21 monsters. We opted to play the 3rd Dekoichi. We also have a copy of Book of Moon, and we got the Mind Control with the MST back in the main. I suppose we are sacrificing the Jar of Greeds here. No Torrential in this list. We do still have the Phoenix Wing Wind Blast in the main. We actually don't have any Raigeki Breaks anywhere at all, which is kind of interesting. Still have the Triple Trap Dust Shoot, but the side is a little interesting here. We have Cliff the Trap Remover, which is an interesting card. This is a card I love to play with whenever I play the Warrior deck, but I don't think I've ever really seen it in a turbo list, at least in recent memory, right?
No, I don't even think it's that common in Warrior. Like, yeah, we see it quite a bit, but it's not a staple in the side deck. I'm not a big fan of it. Like, I feel like Amazonas Archer is always better than this, because it's hard to make this guy connect and actually remove floodgates, which is the idea against Burn.
I wonder if this was an inclusion, because it's very well known that there are 2 players in the Detroit area events that like to bring Last Turn, and it's more of a lockdown version of Last Turn. So I wonder if this was a concession to maybe, in case you get paired against those players, to take out the Last Turn deck, because Rob Cedar actually did get paired against one of them last season. So I wonder if that was sort of in the back of his mind, like, I gotta get these Last Turn players out of here.
That would also explain the double tornado on this side.
Yeah, definitely some interesting choices here. We have the level 2 as well. We were talking about maybe there was a Rhoda in this side deck, and then it was taken out, but we just decided to leave the Cliff in the level 2. I wonder, it'd be interesting if that was actually the case, because I have seen Rhoda pop up in some turbo decks to, it grabs a Zombara. Maybe you can play DD Warrior Lady. You can get your level 2 if you want to play that. So it's kind of interesting there. We've got the double Dust Tornado. Kind of interesting. We don't see a Raigeki Break or anything in that slot. Normally we see the 3rd Discard Trap, but I don't hate double Dust Tornado. But we also do have the Zing Zin Hu over there. So Rob definitely deciding that, we're just going to pack a whole bunch of spell and trap hate rather than cards that may be a little bit more flexible, like Raigeki Break.
I think I'd still prefer Raigeki Break, just because it can take out the Jar monsters against Burn. That seems to always be a big deal. But yeah, if the consideration is like last turn lockdown, then this might make sense in the local meta.
Sure. All right, moving on to 4th place, we have Chris Patto, also on Chaos Turbo. We are moving down to 2 copies of Dekoichi in this list, just the 20 monsters. We do still have the Mind Control, though the MST has moved to the side in this one. We do still have Phoenix Wing Wind Blast. The Torrential is back. We're down to 2 copies of Trap Dust Shoot, and we have all 3 copies of Jar of Greed. In the side, we have your side nemesis. The Kaiku has returned to the side, this time in multiples. We have 2 Kaikus. We have a Spirit Reaper, which I think is an interesting tech here. And then we have a bigger Scapegoat package. We have 2 Scapegoats and 2 Metamorphosis for the Warrior Hate. And then we've got Dust Tornado. We do see the 1 Raigeki break, so we do have the 3rd discard trap in this list. And then we've got 2 Sakuretsus, and we have the 3rd trap Dust Shoot actually in the side, which is kind of interesting.
In general, I don't like it. I don't like to main Minecon until you've already maxed out your shoots, because like Minecon is a very specific matchup, right? Like it's only good against Turbo, and shoot kind of just comes up overall. Like it can just be played against anything if you just draw it and they have enough cards. So I think it's always better to main shoots before you main Minecons. And also, if you do that, like let's say you kick out a jar from the main deck and put in shoot instead, it would also open up space in the side deck for just another Saku, which would be pretty neat. On the Kaikus, I like her more if there's more of them, to be honest, because then there's like this almost Minecon dodging strategy there where you're kind of anticipating the opponent's side and suddenly you're just putting up a different threat than they were expecting. So I think like the more you play, the more legitimate it gets. 2 is more than 1, so well, it's pretty standard. Especially the side is like, aside from the double Kaiku Reaper and the shoot, the side is pretty normal. Like, it's pretty much what you'd see online as well.
Moving on to 3rd place, we have more Chaos Turbo. Everybody get excited. We've got Sebastian here in 3rd place. This deck is actually, it's pretty different. So yeah, do get hyped for this Turbo list. We have 0 copies of Dekoichi. Not 1, not 2, not 3, 0. Instead, we have 2 copies of Kaiku in the main. I'm a fan of Kaiku, but I know this is very different from really any of the things that I've seen from Turbo, at least for the monster lineup. I don't think I've seen a Dekoichi list, Turbo list, and maybe ever, really.
Yeah, I think I like it overall because like we're going to see the justification for all these things in the side. The only thing I change is like I don't think I want double NA if I cut down on Deco completely. Like I think it would be pretty easy to just replace 1 NA with a Deco, but maybe the idea is to have fodder for triple Phoenix, but on the other hand, you don't have that much stuff in the grave to return, so how much fodder is it really?
I know you mentioned the AJT influence on the meta around this area. I know in some past events and some past iterations of the AJT list, he was playing 2 copies of Kaiku in the main, but the cut was actually Night Assailant. So he was still playing the Dekoichis, but Sebastian here opting to play the Night Assailants instead. It's pretty interesting. Looking at spells, we don't have the Book of Moon. We do have the Mind Control back in the main. Just 1 Jar of Greed to go along with double Trap Dust Shoot. We have the Torrential coming back. And then, yeah, as you mentioned, 3 full copies of Phoenix Wing Wind Blast in this list.
Yeah, we kind of see the justification for the Kaikus on the side with like the Gorilla, Jinzo, and Call of the Haunted package. Even the level 2 is part of it, where you kind of semi-smokescreen into like a Chaos aggro kind of list. I know that AJT has done that in the past for quite a bit. I think it's been pretty underexplored overall. I think he's the only notable player who's tried it like this. It can definitely work, and it can definitely trip people up who don't see it coming.
Yeah, for sure. I've been victim to Call Jinzo package many times, and of course, I'm a huge fan of Berserk Gorilla. I know people debate this card into the ground, whether we should be playing this or the Zombra, and I know it was mentioned several times on the stream that the Berserk Gorilla package, the Jinzo, all of that good stuff, it works pretty well with the Call of the Haunted package. So I actually kind of like the let's get aggressive approach that we have with some of these Turbo lists.
Yep, there are some more unusual cards on the side though. Like for example, Vangu is usually not played in Turbo because your control matchup is already good enough. Spell Canceller is a specific anti-reasoning gate thing. I'm not sure how good this is for you though. Book, again, like we don't need stuff on the side for control, we're already good enough. Lightning Vortex is, in my opinion, like one of the biggest noob traps of the format. Like you read it, and it sounds kind of amazing, but it then kind of turns out to not be. Like unless you play Dimension Fusion, you shouldn't play this. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. I know there can be a decent number of Reasoning Gate decks in the area, so that might explain the Spell Canceller a little bit. Walking around at the event, scouting out the matchups, we did have several RGT decks there. We actually had a Library player as well. So Spell Canceller potentially could have come up huge in this tournament. So maybe it was some sort of a decent meta call.
I think I'd still prefer Jaugen.
Oh, I love Jaugen. Yeah. Yeah, I would pick Jowgen for a list. This player opting for the more nuclear option in Spell Canceller. And then we have a little Hallowed Life Barrier. I haven't seen this one hanging out in a list in a while.
Yeah, it's a neat anti-OTK and anti-burn card. Kind of covers both Reason Gate and burn. It's okay. I think it's like an alright card. The question is if you have the side deck space for it or not. But apparently Sebastian had it.
Yep. As far as warrior package goes,
nothing.
It's kind of, yeah, not a whole lot.
I guess the call package kind of works, right? Like the Gorillas, the Jinzo, the call, and I guess you at least have the Sakus. So that kind of works, sort of.
Yeah, still not the heaviest side for warrior that I've ever seen come from the turbo deck, but yeah, just taking a little bit of a different approach here. All right, we have made it to second place, our first finalist here in our first warrior deck, and unfortunately our last warrior deck of the top 8 deck list. Spoilers. We have Shawn Munn. Getting into this, we've got the Magician of Faith and the Spirit Reaper in the main. I know a lot of warrior players opt to play this. We have one Book of Moon, just a couple of Trap Dust Shoots. Everything else looking pretty standard for the warrior main. I do like these builds of the warrior deck with the Triple Blade Knight, Double Kaiku. Getting into the side though, that's where we get some spice going here.
Yeah.
Watching the stream, you can see Return Winner talking about the Mobius coming in against Turbo. I'd imagine Shawn's bringing in the Mobius here a lot, because this is kind of like the backbone of the side deck. We have 3 copies of Mobius, a Brain Control, and 2 copies of Soul Exchange. This is set up to just like take advantage of the opponents bringing in all of their battle traps and stuff. Soul Exchange, very good against Turbo, even if you're just going into Mobius. But even then, as you've seen in a lot of these Chaos Turbo lists, they're bringing in a lot of Sakuretsu armors and stuff. So the Mobius isn't really that dead. I actually kind of like the idea behind it. And I know some of the other big warrior players in the format have also mentioned that the idea isn't really that bad. What do you think about the Mobius side here?
Yeah, I think like the entire side deck just hinges on the Mobius almost Monarch smokescreen. I think the idea is also that post game 1, your opponent won't be leaving shoots in against warrior ever, so it's a lot easier to play Monarchs. That might be part of it. And yeah, obviously Mobius just feasts on Sakus. That's a really easy way to just go plus for no reason. Yeah, I'm not sure how like consistent this is. I've only seen one of his matches on stream, and in that one he sided it in the game 2 and promptly lost that game 2 before winning game 3 on his usual warrior build. So this is also like something that comes in and out, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess it's a little less good into like the turbo decks that are playing, Scapegoat, the control package in the side, because Mobius not as good with dealing with Scapegoat as it is with dealing with Sakus.
Usually it's either Solemns or Goats, right? And even Solemns take care of Mobius pretty well. So there are definitely punishes for dropping a Mobius.
Yeah, now that you mentioned Solemn, actually, I don't think we've seen a single Solemn, at least yet, in these turbo sides, which is kind of interesting.
I think that's very common offline, because offline time is so much more important. Like everything takes a little bit longer. You shuffle your deck and stuff like that. Like there's probably like 5 minutes that you just lose per game to stuff that has to be done manually that you can do by just a click of a button online.
Sure.
So going Solemn can be a little riskier.
That's fair.
I kind of want to talk about evac. Can we talk about evac?
Yeah, absolutely. We can talk about that.
All right. So recently, Easy to Slay You has been kind of inventing his own deck almost a bit. We're not even really sure what to call it. It's kind of a warrior-ish, like it's somewhere in between warrior, earth aggro, but also kind of its own thing with hand denial, with time seal and drop off. And he also plays evac in that, because he plays like very small amount of monsters, but needs to keep them alive. So it's more of like a safety net. So you just like bounce the monster back to hand if it gets targeted by Regaki Break and stuff like that. Maybe this is the idea here as well. Like you're trying to have evac in the side, I guess, against control, because that's always need to just bounce tear up, but also maybe in the aggro mirror just to protect yourself from battle traps. I don't know.
I think generally the idea for Compulse and Warriors is it's mostly just for the control matchup, just for tear. I don't think. Well, let's see. We've got Spies I guess if we're bringing in this whole side, maybe we are actually bringing in the Mobius in the mirror, because we do have the brain control. Soul Exchange isn't, terrible into Mobius. Generally, I don't like, and a lot of Warrior players don't like Mobius in the mirror, because a lot of times you just don't have that monster laying around, and it just kind of gets a little bricky. But if you've got Soul Exchange and stuff coming in, so we're already bringing in, if that's the case, we're already bringing in 3 copies of Mobius, a Zombara, brain control, Soul Exchange, Sakuretsu, and we're definitely bringing in the Spies. I'm not certain you would have room for the Compulse, but yeah, you're definitely spot on with the way Easy to Slay You uses it to help protect the monsters, and it is a card that I've experimented with in the main deck of Warriors before, because it does have that aspect of it. You give up a little bit of tempo, but you get to save your threat, and sometimes that can be very advantageous.
It's also kind of neat against burn. At least you can unlock a Jama lock, stuff like that.
Yeah, you definitely also bring in the Compulse against burn. I didn't think about that. Thank you. All right, and getting into first place, we have our champion of GOAT Grand Prix Livonia, Evan Trowler, playing Chaos Turbo. So Turbo taking down another event, getting another invite here. Looking at the list, the Dakoichis are back. Here we have Kaiku and only 1 Night Assailant. So what you were saying earlier with if you're going to put the Kaikus in, maybe we cut the Night Assailant instead of Dakoichi. It came true here in our champions list. Mind Control in the main, MST in the main. Here we have all 3 copies of Raigeki Break in the main. It's a little interesting. No Torrential here. Double Trap Dust Shoot. How do you feel about this main? It's a little different.
Well, a lot of the stuff repeats from earlier. Like, for example, I don't like a Minecon if you haven't maxed out your shoots yet. I think otherwise the main is kind of just very solid. You could, like, for example, you could move the MST to the side for something else, but like that's not really relevant right now, is it?
Right.
The side deck, though, is even more interesting because like there's always like this triangle of monsters that you side against Warrior, right? Like you have the Zombira, which is the most popular one, then you have Cypher Soldier, which is just less popular, and then Gorilla, which is even less popular. And Evan just decides to bring one of each. Not sure what the reasoning is here. Maybe he just didn't want to like debate it and just had a bit of everything, who knows. But then also the double Kaikus, which again, like I think they are better in the side if they come in a mass, The more you have, the better.
Yeah, we actually have all 3 copies of Kaiku between the main and the side, which is very interesting.
Tsuk is usually not necessary against control decks. Like that's the matchup it comes in against, because your matchup is already that good. But if you have it, you might as well, play it. I guess this is also a Sura.
Yeah.
But especially with Token Thanksgiving also being in the side, I guess that's mostly a timeout consideration. And against burn, I feel like the Tsuk is just not necessary, right? Like if we already have like a bonus card that we side against control, we probably don't need it. But now, like the real wild part is the Decree and the stuff that I've been talking about earlier, where it shuts off your own battle traps. And like the other deck at least had the control package to kind of make up for it. This one doesn't. This one just sides 3 Saku, so it looks really weak to Warrior.
Yeah, not a whole lot going on here for Warrior. I guess the Sook is actually pretty decent in that matchup as well. Speaking of second Sook, this could also be a little bit of AJT influence. I actually spoke with him before the event, and he showed me his list because I wasn't playing. AJT had double Sook in the main, and that was sort of a play on the turbo decks. He had some intel that some of the local players were actually siding in their control package in the mirror for turbo. So he was just going to kind of one up that with the Tsukuyomi. So I wonder if that was sort of a bleed over, but Evan didn't want to have 2 in the main, because if the idea is to bring in the control package from the side, why would we need the second Tsukuyomi in the main? We can just side it in if that's the case. I will say there were quite a few control decks at the top tables all day at this event. I'm actually surprised one of them didn't sneak in, or a couple didn't sneak into this top 8 here. But control was definitely pretty well represented. So maybe Evan just had some intel into what decks people may be bringing. But yeah, I think I'm aligned with you. Maybe not necessary, especially if we have that Token Thanksgiving, which is. Token Thanksgiving is an interesting card in its own. You really don't see it a whole lot in decks like Turbo or even like Warrior, where they care about the scapegoat a lot. So maybe a little bit of time concern, because we've seen, like you said, we've seen like 2 copies of Mystic Walk in a lot of these lists, and we only see 1 here, so maybe it was just kind of like a flip-flop there.
I guess Thanksgiving is a little better if you have like a deck that places tokens itself, like if you have your own scapegoats and stuff, but we don't see that here, so I think I would have just preferred the Vogue.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. All right, well, that is going to wrap up our top 8 deck list. Once again, congratulations to Evan Trowler for taking the event down and for getting his invite to the World Championship. We will see you at GOAT Worlds this year. Speaking on the event a little bit, thank you for RIW Hobbies for hosting. And I just wanted to point out, we had, it was either 41 or 42 players last season at this tournament, and this season we saw 52 players. So percentage-wise, that's a pretty decent amount of growth. Always love to see these events get bigger and people come out. The GGPs are a lot of fun. Would absolutely recommend, if anybody is even beginning to think about traveling to one of these to have some fun playing some GOAT format Yu-Gi-Oh, would absolutely recommend to do so. A whole lot of fun. These events are great. But that's going to wrap up our video. Grumple, you got anything else to say to the people?
I think I'm done.
All right then. That's going to do it for us.